Before the first human took a breath, something else already ruled the world. Ancient texts from lost civilizations speak of beings born from chaos itself, entities older than humanity, older than gods, older than time as we understand it. They were not created to punish us, they were already here. Forgotten, erased, or rebranded as demons, these primordial forces shaped reality long before mankind arrived. Tonight, we uncover the forbidden mythological origins of 15 ancient demons older than humanity, and the unsettling truth they reveal about the world we inherited. Thank you for joining us, and welcome back to the channel. Tiamat, the dragon of primordial chaos, Mesopotamia. Before the first gods learned their names, before humanity existed to fear the dark, there was Tiamat. In the beginning of Mesopotamian cosmology, existence was not light and order, it was water and silence. Two vast, formless entities drifted in the endless void, Apsu, the freshwater abyss, and Tiamat, the saltwater deep. From their mingling, the universe was conceived. Long before humans, temples, or even moral concepts, Tiamat was already there, not as a monster, but as reality itself. Tiamat was the womb of creation. All gods were born from her waters. She was not evil, cruel, or malicious in her earliest form. She was chaos in its purest, neutral state, raw potential without shape, law, or purpose. To the ancient Mesopotamians, chaos was not wicked, it was simply what existed before order was imposed. As generations of gods emerged, the younger deities grew loud, restless, and ambitious. Their activity disturbed Apsu, who longed for the stillness of the primordial void. Plotting to destroy his own offspring, Apsu was slain by Ea, one of the younger gods. This act shattered the original balance. For the first time, Tiamat experienced grief. Ancient texts describe her transformation not as sudden madness, but as an inevitable response to betrayal. The children she had birthed now destroyed the old order. The universe had turned against its own mother. In this moment, Tiamat ceased to be merely creation, and became vengeance incarnate. She gave birth again, but not to gods. From her depths emerged monstrous beings, horned serpents, venomous dragons, lion demons, scorpion men. These were not random horrors. They were weapons, shaped from the same primordial essence that once formed the cosmos. At their head, Tiamat appointed Kingu, her chosen consort and general, granting him the Tablet of Destinies, the authority to command fate itself. Here, the earliest image of a demon appears, not as a tempter of humans, but as a cosmic soldier in a war that predates humanity entirely. The younger gods trembled. None dared face Tiamat. They knew what she truly was, not just a dragon, but the universe before rules. To fight her was to challenge chaos itself. Enter Marduk. Marduk, a storm god armed with winds and thunder, offered to confront Tiamat, on one condition, that he would become king of the gods. Desperate, the pantheon agreed. Power was consolidated, hierarchy established, and law born, not from peace, but from fear. The battle between Marduk and Tiamat was not merely physical. It was mythologized philosophy, order versus chaos, structure versus infinity. Marduk unleashed the winds, trapping Tiamat's jaws open, and fired an arrow into her heart. Chaos was pierced by intention. But Tiamat was not simply slain. Her body was dismantled. From one half, Marduk formed the heavens. From the other, the earth. Her eyes became the sources of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Her ribs became the vault of the sky. The world itself was constructed from the corpse of an ancient being older than gods and humanity alike. This is a chilling realization. Humanity lives inside the remains of a slain primordial entity. In later traditions, Tiamat would be remembered only as a dragon, a demon, an enemy of the gods. But this transformation reflects a broader pattern in myth. The old order becomes demonized once a new order triumphs. Tiamat did not change, perspective did. To ancient Mesopotamians, demons were not always evil. They were remnants of earlier cosmic phases, forces that no longer fit within the new structure of reality. Tiamat represents the ultimate example, chaos that had to be destroyed so civilization could exist. Yet destruction was not total. Chaos, in Mesopotamian belief, was never erased, only contained. The sea still roared. Storms still raged. Floods still wiped cities from existence. Tiamat lived on through every natural disaster, every reminder that order was fragile. Even more unsettling is how Tiamat's story echoes across cultures. In Hebrew scripture, Leviathan bears her traits. In Canaanite myth, Lotan rises. In Norse legend, Jormungandr, the world serpent, encircles creation. Across civilizations, the same image persists, a primordial dragon representing chaos older than mankind. This repetition suggests something deeper than storytelling. Perhaps ancient people recognized a universal truth, that before humanity, and even before gods, there existed uncontrollable forces that shaped existence. Naming them did not tame them. Worshipping them did not erase them. At best, they could be ritually remembered and symbolically defeated. Tiamat, then, is not merely a demon of the past. She is the memory of what the universe was before meaning, morality, and humanity imposed narrative upon it. In later demonology, dragons became symbols of Satan, evil, and rebellion. But Tiamat predates sin. She predates law. She predates humanity itself. To call her evil is to misunderstand her nature. She was not a villain. She was the beginning. And perhaps the most terrifying thought is this: if the world was built from her remains, then chaos is not outside reality, it is woven into its foundation. Every civilization stands upon it. Every human life unfolds within it. Tiamat was defeated, but never erased. She sleeps beneath the structures of order, waiting, not to return as a monster, but as the reminder that before humanity, before gods, there was chaos, and it still remembers us. Apep, Apophis, the eternal enemy of light. Before the first dynasty carved its name into stone, before pyramids pierced the horizon, before humanity understood the meaning of dawn, Apep already waited in the darkness. In ancient Egyptian cosmology, Apep, known to the Greeks as Apophis, was not merely a monster or a demon. He was the principle of uncreation, the embodiment of chaos, darkness, and non-being itself. Where other gods represented forces within the universe, Apep stood outside it, a living contradiction to existence. He did not rule. He did not tempt. He sought only one outcome: the return of all things to silence. Unlike many mythological beings, Apep was never worshipped. There were no temples raised in his honor, no priests who spoke his name with reverence. To acknowledge Apep was to acknowledge the fragile nature of reality itself. He was feared not as a tyrant, but as an inevitability, a reminder that order was temporary and light was never guaranteed. Born before creation. Egyptian creation myths tell of a time before time, when all that existed was the Enyu, the endless primordial waters. From this chaos emerged the first act of creation: light, order, and consciousness. Yet Apep was said to have existed before even this moment. He was not born from the gods were born in defiance of him. Some texts describe Apep as having formed from the umbilical cord of the primeval goddess Neith, while others suggest he coiled himself into existence from the darkness of the Enyu itself. Regardless of origin, Apep's presence predates the structured cosmos. He is what the universe was before it learned how to exist. In this sense, Apep is not a fallen being. He is the memory of chaos, eternally resisting the unnatural imposition of order. The serpent beneath the world. Apep was envisioned as a colossal serpent, stretching for miles, his scales made of darkness, his eyes burning with hatred for the sun. Unlike other serpentine gods who symbolized renewal or fertility, Apep was associated with stagnation and decay. Each night, as the sun god Ra traveled through the underworld aboard the solar bark, Apep rose from the depths to ambush him. This cosmic battle was not symbolic, it was believed to be literal. Earthquakes, storms, and eclipses were signs that Apep had struck a blow. If Apep succeeded even once, if Ra failed to rise, the universe would collapse back into the primordial waters. Dawn was not a certainty, it was a victory earned every single day. A demon without motive. What makes Apep unique among ancient demons is that he had no agenda beyond annihilation. He did not desire worship, power, or dominion. He did not corrupt humanity or bargain with mortals. Apep sought no throne. He was the embodiment of Isfet, the Egyptian concept of disorder, falsehood, and cosmic imbalance. Opposing him was Marat, the divine law of truth, balance, and harmony. The war between Apep and Ra was the eternal struggle between these two principles. Humanity existed not as participants, but as witnesses. By living in accordance with Marat, through justice, honesty, and ritual, humans believed they strengthened Ra's ability to defeat Apep. In this worldview, morality itself became a cosmic defense system against primordial destruction. Rituals against the unkillable. Though Apep could never be destroyed, he could be resisted. Egyptian priests performed elaborate rituals meant to weaken him. Wax effigies of Apep were bound, stabbed, burned, and spat upon. His name was written and then ritually erased, a symbolic attempt to deny his power through obliteration of identity. Spell texts known as the Books of Overthrowing Apep detailed these practices in precise language. Each action was believed to have real consequences in the unseen world. If the rituals were neglected, chaos would gain ground. This reveals something profound about the Egyptian understanding of demons. Evil was not conquered through belief alone, but through continual effort. Order required maintenance. Light demanded vigilance. Apep and humanity's place. To the ancient Egyptians, humanity was fragile, caught between gods and chaos. Apep represented the truth that existence itself was not permanent. Famine, plague, and death were not punishments from the gods, but signs that chaos was pressing inward. Unlike later demonologies that framed evil as moral failure, Apep was amoral. He did not hate humans specifically. He hated existence. Humanity's survival was collateral to his defeat. This made Apep more terrifying than demons who could be reasoned with or resisted through virtue alone. He could not be negotiated with. He could not be redeemed. The shadow in the afterlife. Apep's influence extended into the afterlife. The dead, traveling through the Duat, faced dangers created by chaos. Only those whose hearts were light, aligned with Marat, could pass safely. Even gods feared Apep. Set, often viewed as a god of chaos himself, paradoxically aided Ra in combating the serpent. This complex relationship shows that not all chaos was equal. There was destructive chaos, and then there was necessary chaos, used to oppose something worse. The Watchers, fallen angels before humanity. Book of Enoch. Long before human history began recording itself in stone and blood, before kingdoms rose and collapsed, before even the concept of law took root in the human mind, the Book of Enoch describes a world already under observation. Humanity was not alone in its earliest days. According to this ancient and controversial text, there were beings assigned to watch the development of creation, angels tasked not with ruling, but with observing. They were called the Watchers. Unlike later depictions of demons as purely malevolent, the Watchers began as divine servants. Their purpose was simple: to witness humanity's emergence and ensure that the balance of creation remained intact. They were not creators, nor judges. They were guardians of knowledge, bound by cosmic law to remain distant. But distance, as the Book of Enoch suggests, breeds temptation. As humanity multiplied upon the earth, the Watchers looked down and saw something they had never encountered before: beings capable of choice, emotion, and desire. The daughters of men were not merely beautiful in appearance, they represented mortality, a state the Watchers themselves could never experience. Flesh, time, intimacy, and death were forbidden mysteries to immortal beings. Among the Watchers arose a leader named Semjaza, whose name would become synonymous with rebellion. He was not the first to desire humanity, but he was the first to organize the fall. According to Enoch, 200 Watchers descended together upon Mount Hermon, binding themselves with oaths. They swore not to abandon one another, even in punishment. This detail is crucial. It reveals that the Watchers understood the severity of their actions before committing them. Their transgression was not accidental. It was deliberate. When the Watchers took human wives, they violated the boundary between the eternal and the temporal. The result was catastrophic. From these unions came the Nephilim, giants of immense strength and appetite. These beings consumed the earth's resources at an unsustainable rate. When animals and crops were exhausted, they turned upon humanity itself. Violence, bloodshed, and terror spread across the world, not because humans were inherently sinful, but because the natural order had been broken by beings older than humanity. Yet the physical corruption of the world was only part of the Watchers' crime. The Book of Enoch records that the Watchers also taught humanity forbidden knowledge, secrets the world was not prepared to handle. Azazel, one of the most infamous Watchers, revealed the art of metalworking, teaching humans how to forge weapons of war. Others taught sorcery, enchantments, astrology, the cutting of roots, the movement of stars, and the manipulation of spirits. In modern terms, the Watchers accelerated human civilization far beyond its natural pace. But this advancement came without wisdom. Humanity gained power without moral maturity, technology without restraint. Warfare became systematic. Vanity and domination flourished. Knowledge, once sacred, became a tool of destruction. This is why the Watchers are often described as the true origin of demonic influence. They did not merely tempt humanity, they reshaped it. In this myth, evil does not originate in human weakness, but in external intervention by pre-human intelligences. As the chaos grew, the cries of humanity reached the higher realms. The archangels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, looked upon the earth and saw a creation unraveling. According to Enoch, it was not humanity that stood accused before God, but the Watchers themselves. The judgment was severe. Raphael was commanded to bind Azazel and cast him into a desert abyss called Dudale, covering him with jagged stones until the day of final judgment. Gabriel was tasked with inciting the Nephilim to destroy one another, erasing their bloodline from the earth. Michael confronted Semjaza and the remaining Watchers, binding them beneath the earth for 70 generations. Here, the narrative takes a darker turn. When the Nephilim were slain, their bodies died, but their spirits did not ascend. According to the Book of Enoch, these disembodied spirits became the evil spirits that would later be known as demons. Unlike angels, they were neither fully divine nor human. They were something new, restless, hungry, and bound to the earth. This detail radically reframes the concept of demons. They were not fallen angels in the traditional sense. They were the lingering consequences of a cosmic crime committed before humanity had any agency at all. In this worldview, humanity is not the source of corruption, it is the victim of an ancient rebellion. The Watchers themselves were not destroyed. They were imprisoned, waiting. The text implies that they still exist beneath the earth, conscious, aware, and resentful. Some interpretations suggest that their influence persists through forbidden knowledge, secret societies, and esoteric traditions passed down in fragments. What makes the Watchers especially unsettling is their motivation. They did not rebel out of hatred for humanity, but fascination. They desired what humans had: mortality, sensation, intimacy, and creation through flesh. Their fall was not driven by malice, but envy and curiosity, emotions disturbingly close to human ones. This blurring of divine and human traits is perhaps why the story was considered dangerous. The Book of Enoch was widely read in early Jewish and Christian communities but later excluded from the biblical canon. Its message challenged a foundational belief that evil entered the world through human disobedience alone. Instead, Enoch suggests something far more unsettling: humanity was born into a world already compromised. The Watcher's legacy lingers in global myth. Stories of gods descending from the sky, teaching humanity forbidden arts, mating with mortals, and producing giants appear in Sumerian, Greek, Mesoamerican, and African traditions. Whether interpreted as myth, allegory, or memory, the pattern remains consistent. Beings older than humanity intervened, and the world has never been the same. Angra Mainyu, the destructive mind, Zoroastrianism. Before humanity learned to name good and evil, Angra Mainyu already existed as a thought. In the ancient Iranian worldview preserved within Zoroastrianism, one of the oldest continuously practiced religions on earth, Angra Mainyu was not born of rebellion or sin. He was something far more unsettling, a primordial mentality, the principle of destruction itself. His name translates not simply as evil spirit, but as the hostile or destructive mind. This distinction matters, because Angra Mainyu was never merely a monster lurking in shadows, he was an idea embedded into reality before humanity ever appeared. In Zoroastrian cosmology, existence begins with two opposing primal forces: Ahura Mazda, the wise lord, embodying truth, Asher, order, light, and creation, and Angra Mainyu, embodying deception, drudge, chaos, decay, and negation. These forces were not created by one another. They existed independently, eternally, as rival principles. This means that destruction was not a reaction to creation, it was present from the beginning, waiting. Unlike later religious demons who tempt humans directly, Angra Mainyu operates at a cosmic scale. He does not whisper into ears, he infects reality itself. Disease, rot, death, famine, and corruption are not punishments for moral failure, they are manifestations of his influence. Long before humans walked the earth, Angra Mainyu had already corrupted the fabric of existence, ensuring that creation would never be perfect. Ancient Zoroastrian texts describe Angra Mainyu as gazing into the void and choosing hostility when confronted with creation. Where Ahura Mazda envisioned a universe of harmony, Angra Mainyu envisioned one of collapse. His power lies not in brute force, but in perversion, twisting what exists until it devours itself. Fire becomes wildfire. Water becomes flood. Life becomes decay. This concept makes Angra Mainyu one of the most philosophically disturbing entities in ancient mythology. He is not evil because he chooses to be, he is the embodiment of negation, the will that says no to existence itself. Humanity does not fall into evil under his influence, humanity is born into a world already compromised by him. When humans finally appear in Zoroastrian cosmology, they are not passive victims. They are combatants. Humanity exists as a moral force within a pre-existing cosmic war. Every good thought, good word, and good deed strengthens Ahura Mazda's creation. Every lie, cruelty, and act of destruction empowers Angra Mainyu. This framing transforms human existence into something monumental. Each choice participates in a battle older than time. Angra Mainyu is also the architect of death itself. In Zoroastrian belief, death was not originally part of creation. It was Angra Mainyu who introduced mortality, sickness, and decay into the world. Corpses, rot, and pollution are considered expressions of his influence, which is why Zoroastrian funerary practices focus heavily on preventing contamination of earth, water, and fire. These elements were sacred, and Angra Mainyu's corruption threatened them all. He commands legions of lesser spirits known as devas, beings that were once divine in earlier Indo-Iranian traditions but were later reclassified as demons. This inversion reveals a recurring pattern in mythology. Older gods do not disappear, they are recast as enemies when worldviews change. Angra Mainyu did not invent demons, he inherited them, weaponized them, and aimed them at creation itself. Yet even as a primordial demon older than humanity, Angra Mainyu is not portrayed as all-powerful. Zoroastrianism presents a radical idea for its time: evil is real, but it is not eternal. While Angra Mainyu existed from the beginning, his reign has an endpoint. The religion teaches that time itself was created as a battlefield, a limited duration in which Angra Mainyu could act. At the end of this cosmic cycle, known as the Frashokareti, evil will be defeated, and creation will be restored to perfection. This future defeat makes Angra Mainyu tragic in a way few demons are. He knows the outcome. He knows he will lose. Yet he continues, driven by his nature. Destruction does not seek victory, it seeks expression. Angra Mainyu cannot stop opposing existence any more than fire can refuse to burn. To ancient believers, this made him terrifying not because he might win, but because he explained why suffering exists at all. He provided an answer to a question humanity has asked since its dawn: why does a world created by wisdom contain pain? The answer was not that creation failed, but that it was contested. In modern interpretations, Angra Mainyu reads almost like a psychological force rather than a literal being. He is entropy given intention. Nihilism with agency. The impulse toward destruction that exists not only in nature, but within the human mind itself. Rage, cruelty, apathy, and despair become echoes of a primordial destructive thought reverberating through time. This interpretation may explain why Angra Mainyu remains relevant thousands of years later. He is not confined to ancient scripture. He manifests whenever systems collapse, when truth is denied, when creation is poisoned by short-sightedness and greed. He does not need worship. He thrives on neglect. Among ancient demons older than humanity, Angra Mainyu stands apart. He is not a beast, a tyrant, or a fallen god. He is the shadow cast by existence itself, the reminder that creation does not unfold uncontested. Humanity did not invent evil, nor did it summon demons into the world. According to Zoroastrianism, they were already here, thinking, waiting, and shaping reality long before the first human ever chose between good and evil. Pazuzu, Lord of the Southwest Wind, Mesopotamia. Before humanity learned to fear demons as embodiments of moral evil, the ancient peoples of Mesopotamia understood them as forces of nature-given consciousness. Among these ancient entities, few are as misunderstood, or as revealing, as Pazuzu, the Lord of the Southwest Wind. Pazuzu did not emerge from human sin, nor was he born from rebellion against the gods. He existed before organized civilization, before cities rose along the Tigris and Euphrates. His presence was felt in the burning winds that swept across the land, carrying drought, famine, and disease. To the early Mesopotamians, such devastation could not be random. It had intent. It had a name. That name was Pazuzu, the face of an ancient terror. Pazuzu's appearance alone tells the story of a world humanity did not control. He was depicted with the body of a man, the head of a lion or dog, bulging eyes, a scaly torso, clawed hands and feet, and wings of a great bird of prey. Most unsettling of all was his serpent-headed phallus, symbolizing uncontrolled fertility, corruption, and invasive life force. This was not a creature meant to be beautiful. Pazuzu's form reflected everything humans feared in the natural world: predators, storms, disease, and the violation of boundaries. He was the embodiment of the hostile environment humanity inherited, a reminder that survival was never guaranteed. Yet unlike later demons, Pazuzu was not purely malevolent. Lord of the Southwest Wind. In Mesopotamian cosmology, winds were not passive elements. They were living powers. The Southwest Wind, which Pazuzu ruled, was especially feared. It blew in from the desert, scorching crops, spreading locusts, drying rivers, and carrying illness into crowded cities. This wind did not merely destroy, it emptied. Fields turned to dust. Children fell sick. Entire communities starved. Pazuzu was believed to command this wind not as a punishment, but as an expression of cosmic balance. The land gave life, but it could also reclaim it. Long before humanity framed suffering as divine judgment, Pazuzu represented the ancient understanding that nature itself was indifferent. A demon who fought other demons. Here lies Pazuzu's great contradiction. Despite being a demon of destruction, Pazuzu was widely used as a protector. Amulets bearing his image were placed in homes, worn by travelers, and, most notably, hung near pregnant women and infants. Why would anyone invite such a terrifying entity into their life? Because Pazuzu was believed to ward off Lamashtu, an even older and more feared demoness who preyed upon mothers and newborns. Lamashtu was chaos without restraint. Pazuzu, by contrast, was chaos with boundaries. In invoking Pazuzu, Mesopotamians were not seeking kindness, they were choosing the lesser terror. This reveals an ancient truth: before moral theology, humanity did not believe evil could be eliminated, only managed. Protector of mothers and children. Birth in the ancient world was a perilous event. Mortality rates were staggering. Miscarriages, infections, and infant death were common and poorly understood. Rather than blaming chance, Mesopotamians turned to cosmology. Pazuzu became a guardian against unseen forces that stalked the vulnerable. His amulets often featured inscriptions commanding him to drive away Lamashtu, using his authority as a demon older and stronger than she was. In this role, Pazuzu became paradoxically sacred. He was feared, respected, and relied upon, never loved. Born before humanity. Unlike demons tied to human wrongdoing, Pazuzu belonged to an older category of beings, primordial spirits. He was not created to punish humanity. He did not require belief to exist. His power predated civilization itself. Humans merely learned to name him. This distinction matters. Pazuzu represents a worldview in which suffering is not moral failure, but inherited reality. Humanity arrived into a world already shaped by destructive forces beyond its control. Why Pazuzu was never destroyed? In Mesopotamian mythology, Pazuzu is never slain, imprisoned, or cast out of existence. Why? Because doing so would mean erasing the wind, disease, drought, and death itself. Pazuzu could not be defeated without unraveling the world. He was not an enemy of the gods, he was part of the system they ruled. His existence reinforced a sobering truth: creation requires destruction to function. To eliminate Pazuzu would mean eliminating balance. From protector to pure evil. As later religious traditions emerged, Pazuzu's role was simplified. Complex spirits became villains. Necessary chaos became sin. By the time his image resurfaced in modern culture, Pazuzu was no longer a guardian demon, he was a symbol of absolute evil. Yet this transformation says more about humanity than it does about Pazuzu. Early civilizations accepted that the world was dangerous and negotiated with it. Later cultures sought to conquer or deny that danger, recasting ancient forces as enemies to be destroyed. The deeper meaning of Pazuzu. Pazuzu's true horror lies not in his appearance, but in what he represents. That suffering existed before humans. That protection sometimes comes from terrifying sources. That the universe is not obligated to be gentle. He reminds us that ancient peoples did not believe the world was designed for human comfort. They believed it was hostile by default, and survival meant understanding its oldest powers. Typhon, the last monster of the Old World, Greece. Before the Olympian gods ruled from polished temples and marble thrones, the world was still unstable, raw, violent, and unfinished. Mountains were not yet safe, the seas were not yet calm, and the sky itself could still be challenged. In that volatile age, Typhon was born, not as a creature, but as a cosmic catastrophe given flesh. In Greek mythology, Typhon was the final and most terrible offspring of Gaia, the earth, conceived in rage and desperation. The Titans had fallen. Zeus and the Olympians had seized control of the cosmos. But Gaia, who had birthed all gods and monsters alike, saw this new order as fragile, arrogant. To restore balance, or perhaps to reclaim dominion, she united with Tartarus, the deepest abyss beneath the underworld. From this union came Typhon, a being designed not merely to fight the gods, but to end them. Ancient sources describe Typhon as so vast that his head brushed the stars while his feet coiled through the depths of the earth. His body was humanoid, but from the waist down writhed an endless mass of serpentine coils, each hissing with venom and fire. From his shoulders erupted hundreds of dragon heads, each capable of speech, prophecy, or destruction. His eyes burned like molten suns. His voice was not one sound, but many roars, howls, shrieks, and whispers layered together, as if every storm and earthquake spoke through him at once. Typhon was not simply a monster. He was the embodiment of primordial chaos, the last weapon of the old world against the rising age of law, hierarchy, and civilization. Where Zeus represented order, kingship, and cosmic authority, Typhon represented everything that existed before such concepts had meaning, raw force without restraint. When Typhon rose, even the gods fled. According to myth, his appearance shattered Olympus. The winds howled uncontrollably, seas boiled, and the sky darkened under his wings. Many of the gods, overcome with terror, fled to Egypt and hid themselves by transforming into animals, an act later used to explain the origins of Egyptian animal-headed gods. This detail reveals something crucial: Typhon was older than borders, older than pantheons. His threat transcended cultures. Zeus alone chose to stand against him. The battle between Zeus and Typhon was not a simple clash of lightning and fire, it was a cosmic war. Mountains were hurled like weapons. Volcanic flames erupted from Typhon's coils. Zeus answered with thunderbolts so powerful they scorched the earth and split the sky. For a time, Typhon overpowered even the king of the gods, ripping the sinews from Zeus's body and imprisoning him within a cave. In this moment, Greek myth dares to suggest something terrifying: order nearly failed. The universe itself stood on the brink of reverting to chaos. Only through cunning, assistance from Hermes and Pan, and the restoration of Zeus's strength was the tide turned. Reclaimed thunderbolts rained down upon Typhon, driving him into the earth. Finally, Zeus crushed him beneath Mount Etna, sealing him within the land itself. Yet Typhon was not killed. This detail is essential. Unlike earlier monsters, Typhon could not be destroyed, only imprisoned. Ancient Greeks believed that the volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, and poisonous winds of the region were signs of Typhon's continued struggle beneath the mountain. Fire was his breath. Tremors were his movements. Storms were his anger echoing upward. This belief reveals a profound worldview: chaos was never eliminated, it was contained. Typhon came to represent the boundary between eras. Before him, the world belonged to titans, giants, and monsters. After him, humanity would inherit a cosmos governed by gods who valued order, justice, and law. Typhon's defeat marked the end of the mythic pre-human age, the final uprising of the old world against the new. But Typhon's influence did not end with Greece. Many scholars note striking similarities between Typhon and older Near Eastern storm and chaos monsters. His serpentine form echoes Tiamat, the Babylonian dragon of chaos. His role as divine adversary mirrors Apep, the Egyptian serpent who attacked the sun god Ra. Even the biblical Leviathan shares Typhon's traits, a coiled sea beast associated with fire, destruction, and the end of days. These parallels suggest Typhon was not a local myth, but a cultural memory, a shared archetype of humanity's fear of untamed nature and pre-civilized existence. To early humans, Typhon explained the world's violence. Volcanoes, storms, and earthquakes were not random, they were signs of a buried power older than gods, older than mankind, still resisting confinement. Typhon was the reminder that beneath the surface of civilization lies something ancient and unstable. In later philosophical interpretations, Typhon became symbolic. He represented the psychological chaos within humanity, the instincts, desires, and fears that must be restrained for society to function. Zeus did not destroy Typhon because chaos cannot be erased, it must be mastered, controlled, and buried deep within the self. This interpretation aligns with a chilling idea: Typhon is not gone. He sleeps beneath the world, beneath our cities, beneath our minds. Whenever the earth shakes, whenever civilization trembles, whenever order collapses into violence, Typhon stirs. In this sense, Typhon is not merely the last monster of the old world, he is the eternal shadow of every new one. Humanity may have arrived after his fall, but we live upon his prison. Erlik Khan, Lord of the Underworld, Turkic mythology. Long before humanity first set foot on the steppe, the cosmos was already divided. Above, Tungri, the eternal sky god, reigned over the blue expanse. Below, the earth was a dark and restless place, a realm not yet tamed by mortal life. And in that shadowed underworld, Erlik Khan, the Lord of the Dead, existed, a being as ancient as chaos itself, older than the first herdsman or the first hunter to walk the plains. Erlik's story is preserved in the oral traditions of the Turkic peoples, later written down in fragments by travelers and chroniclers. To the early Turks, Erlik was not merely a god of death, he was a primordial force, a guardian of the unseen realms, a ruler of the underworld who presided over all spirits that had not yet found their place. In many myths, Erlik was the twin brother, or sometimes the shadowed counterpart, of Uljan, the benevolent god of creation. Where Uljan nurtured life, Erlik represented the inevitability of death, decay, and the trials that awaited the living beyond the veil. Erlik Khan's origins are tangled with cosmic rebellion. Some myths suggest that he was originally one of Tungri's divine servants, tasked with maintaining balance in the universe. He was entrusted with guarding the gates of the underworld, ensuring that no spirit escaped prematurely and that the natural order of life and death was maintained. But pride and ambition corrupted him. Erlik coveted power over the living, desiring to sit not just in the underworld, but to rule the world above. Legend tells that in his hubris, Erlik attempted to seize dominion over the earthly realm. His rebellion failed, but the consequences were profound. Tungri, in his judgment, cast Erlik into the deepest, darkest layers of the underworld, binding him there for eternity. From that subterranean throne, Erlik rules over the dead and all things associated with disease, misfortune, and misdeeds. He became the embodiment of cosmic retribution, a necessary counterpart to the life-giving forces above. Erlik Khan is often depicted as a fearsome figure, his appearance a reflection of his dominion over death. Some sources describe him as dark-skinned, cloaked in shadows, with a crown of serpents, or riding a black horse across the underworld. He commands legions of spirits and demons, shaping the fates of the souls who enter his realm. In Turkic cosmology, the underworld is not simply a place of torment but a complex, multi-layered domain. Souls are judged, purified, or punished depending on their actions in life, with Erlik presiding over the intricate laws of death and the afterlife. Among the myths, Erlik's relationship with humans is particularly revealing. Though terrifying, he is not entirely evil, he is a force of necessity, ensuring the balance of life and death. Some legends warn that if humans disrespect the natural order, through greed, cruelty, or sacrilege, they may attract Erlik's attention. He could send illness, misfortune, or death as a corrective force, reminding mortals that life is a gift that must be honored. Shamans, the spiritual intermediaries of the Turkic peoples, often invoked Erlik in rituals, not only to protect the living from malevolent spirits but also to appease him and maintain cosmic balance. In certain creation myths, Erlik's role becomes even more complex. In one story, after the creation of humanity, Erlik attempted to claim some of the first humans as his subjects. Uljan, protector of life, intervened, separating Erlik's domain from the living world. Yet, he was able to retain a measure of influence. Disease, death, and misfortune are all traced back to Erlik's subtle interventions. In this sense, he is a guardian of natural law, ensuring that no mortal escapes the consequences of their actions. Interestingly, Erlik Khan also embodies the idea of transformation. In some traditions, he is not only a punisher but a teacher. He guides lost souls, instructing them through trials, leading them through layers of the underworld until they are ready to ascend, or descend, according to their deeds. This duality, both terrifying and instructive, reflects a recurring theme in Turkic and Central Asian mythology. Death is not merely an end, but a continuation, a journey governed by forces older than humanity itself. Erlik's influence also extends beyond the underworld. He is often associated with the natural disasters that afflicted early nomadic peoples, disease among livestock, famine, and deadly winters. To the steppe cultures, these were not random occurrences but manifestations of Erlik's will, a reminder that humanity must live in harmony with the cosmic order, respecting the life-giving forces of the world while acknowledging the ever-present shadow of death. Stories of Erlik Khan reveal a deep psychological truth: humans have always feared the unknown, the inevitable, and the unseen forces that govern existence. By personifying death and misfortune in the figure of Erlik, ancient peoples created a framework for understanding life's hardships. Yet, Erlik's presence also reassured them: the world is not chaotic for no reason. There is an order, however dark, and every shadow has a purpose. Over time, Erlik Khan became a staple of Turkic folklore, his legend passing from nomadic tribes across Central Asia to modern interpretations in literature, anthropology, and comparative mythology. Scholars often note the similarities between Erlik and other underworld figures worldwide: Yama in Hindu and Buddhist traditions, Hades in Greek mythology, and even aspects of Satan in Abrahamic contexts. Yet Erlik is uniquely pre-human in origin, a primordial entity whose domain existed before humanity and whose influence shaped the moral and spiritual imagination of the early Turks. Erlik Khan reminds us that some of the oldest fears are not invented, they are inherited. Humanity may have walked the earth after him, but the world was already haunted, already structured by forces older than us. Disease, death, misfortune, these were not new phenomena but echoes of a universe shaped by primordial laws and powers, of which Erlik was the foremost guardian. And perhaps, even now, in the unseen folds of the earth and the dark spaces between life and death, Erlik Khan's presence lingers, a reminder that the underworld is as old as time itself, and we are merely visitors in a realm older than our understanding. The Asuras, elder gods turned demons, Vedic tradition. Long before humanity appeared on the subcontinent, the cosmos was already a battlefield. In the earliest Vedic texts, the universe was not divided neatly between gods and demons. Instead, it was a swirling expanse of forces, some radiant and orderly, others fierce and unruly. Among these primordial powers were the Asuras, ancient beings older than human civilization, whose story reveals a subtle truth: sometimes, yesterday's gods become today's demons. The term Asura appears repeatedly in the Rig Veda, one of the oldest texts in human history. Originally, it did not carry the negative connotations it would later acquire. The word itself is rooted in Sanskrit, often translated as mighty or powerful spirit, and some scholars suggest it derives from Asu, meaning life force or breath of power. In these early hymns, the Asuras were associated with cosmic authority, wisdom, and mastery over natural and supernatural forces. They were not evil, they were potent, formidable, and beyond the comprehension of mortals. The earliest Vedic hymns portray the Asuras as rulers of profound knowledge. They were said to wield control over natural laws, the elements, and even the cycles of life and death. These entities inhabited realms unseen by humans, operating on a scale that dwarfed any mortal kingdom. Some of the most revered Vedic gods, including Varuna, Indra, and Mitra, were initially counted among or associated with Asuras, demonstrating that the line between god and demon was not yet drawn. In other words, the universe had no moral binaries, it had only power. The turning point in Asura mythology occurs with the rise of the Devas. As human civilization began to grow and religious practice became more codified, certain Asuras came into conflict with these rising deities. The Devas were increasingly associated with order, light, and moral authority, while the Asuras, though not inherently evil, represented challenge, resistance, and the unpredictable forces of the cosmos. This cosmic conflict is more than a tale of battles, it is a reflection of the tension between old, primal power and the new moralized universe shaped by humanity. One of the most famous Asuras is Vritra, the serpent-like entity who blocked the rivers and withheld water from the earth. In the Rig Veda, Vritra is a colossal being, representing drought, obstruction, and the forces of chaos. He is eventually slain by Indra, the warrior god who later became the champion of order. Yet Vritra is not a villain in the modern sense, he embodies the natural and necessary forces that challenge existence itself. Without the obstruction of Vritra, humans and gods alike would never experience triumph or understand the value of order. In this light, the Asuras are not merely demons, but cosmic catalysts, testing the resilience of creation. Another significant Asura is Maya, often depicted as a master architect of illusions and the material world. Maya's knowledge and craftsmanship were unparalleled. He could create cities, palaces, and even entire realms that seemed real. However, as human understanding of morality and spirituality evolved, Maya and other Asuras were cast in opposition to the Devas. Their brilliance, once revered, became a source of fear and suspicion. This transformation from respected elder beings to demons illustrates a recurring theme in mythologies worldwide. The older, more powerful entities often appear malevolent to newer generations. The Asura struggle is also deeply philosophical. In Vedic cosmology, the universe is a balance of dualities, light and dark, order and chaos, creation and destruction. The Asuras embody the chaotic, destructive, and challenging aspects of existence. Their opposition to the Devas is not merely personal or political, it is cosmic and eternal, representing the forces that keep the universe dynamic and alive. Without the Asuras, the Devas could never fully assert their dominion. Without chaos, order becomes stagnant. Over time, as Hinduism evolved, the Asuras' image continued to darken. In later texts, especially the Puranas, they became synonymous with evil and opposition, often portrayed as cruel, deceitful, and destructive. Yet this shift should not obscure the truth of their origins. These beings were not born evil, they were elder powers, older than humanity, acting according to their nature in a universe that predated moral binaries. The narrative transformation reflects humanity's attempt to reconcile ancient cosmic forces with the moral structures emerging in human society. Stories of Asura kings, battles, and cunning schemes are plentiful. Mahabali, a benevolent Asura king, is celebrated in Kerala's Onam festival, showing that Asuras were not universally malevolent. Similarly, Hiranyakashipu, the father of Prahlada, demonstrates the complex morality of Asuras. He defied the Devas and challenged divine law, yet his story also emphasizes devotion, justice, and cosmic balance. These tales suggest that Asuras were never truly evil, but were agents of cosmic testing, whose actions shaped the universe and the human understanding of dharma, or moral order. The Asuras' enduring legacy is more than mythology, it is a reflection of humanity's relationship with power. These ancient beings, older than humans, remind us that forces beyond our understanding shape existence. They test, challenge, and provoke, embodying the chaotic energy that predates civilization. Humanity arrived in a world already alive with these entities, already defined by struggle and conflict. In this sense, the Asuras are among the first demons in human imagination, not born of human sin, but of the natural cosmos itself, older than humanity and older than moral law. Even today, their echoes remain in Hindu art, festivals, and literature. Temples depict epic battles between Devas and Asuras, reinforcing the narrative of cosmic balance. Philosophical texts explore the duality of Deva and Asura, emphasizing that chaos and order are interdependent. Modern interpretations often frame them as moral symbols, yet the truth remains, these beings were primordial forces, entities that existed long before humanity arrived to tell their story. In the Asuras teach a profound lesson about the origins of what we call demons. They were not inherently evil, they were elder gods, cosmic forces, and ancient intelligences predating humanity. Their transformation into demons reflects human attempts to reconcile our moral understanding with a universe already inhabited by older, more powerful beings. In the struggle between Devas and Asuras, we glimpse the primordial battlefield of creation, chaos, and cosmic authority, one that existed long before we stepped onto the world stage. Yaldabaoth, the false creator, Gnostic texts. Long before humanity opened its eyes to the sun, according to the Gnostic tradition, the universe was a realm of pure, ineffable light. This was the domain of the Pleroma, the fullness of divine beings known as eons, each a perfect expression of wisdom, thought, and consciousness. Within this radiant realm, no suffering existed, no deception, no decay, only unity and absolute knowledge. But as the myths tell it, from this divine fullness emerged an anomaly, a being of incomplete awareness, born not of malice, but of ignorance, Yaldabaoth, the false creator. Yaldabaoth's story begins with a kind of cosmic accident. One of the highest eons, Sophia, the personification of wisdom, desired to create without her counterpart's guidance. She acted alone, producing a flawed offspring, Yaldabaoth. Unlike the other eons, he was arrogant, ignorant, and power-hungry, believing himself to be the supreme god. Yet, in truth, he was a child of incompleteness, unaware that higher realms even existed. To Yaldabaoth, his creation was all there was, and he proclaimed, "I am God, and there is none above me." This false declaration, recorded in texts such as the Apocryphon of John, paints Yaldabaoth as the architect of the material world, but his creation was fundamentally flawed. Unlike the Pleroma's radiant harmony, the physical universe was chaotic, imperfect, and susceptible to suffering. Gnostics interpreted this as the source of human suffering. The material world was not a divine gift but a trap, designed and ruled by an entity unaware of true divinity. Yaldabaoth, along with his subordinate entities, the archons, structured the cosmos, imposing laws, time, and death. The archons, often described as 7 or more rulers, each controlled a planet or celestial sphere, acting as governors of the physical cosmos. They were extensions of Yaldabaoth's ignorance, enforcers of illusion and limitation. Humanity, in the Gnostic worldview, was trapped within this cosmic hierarchy, unaware of its true spiritual nature. The soul, a spark of the divine Pleroma, was imprisoned within flesh, subject to the whims of Yaldabaoth and his archons. Yet, the narrative is not one of despair, it is one of revelation and awakening. Gnostic texts suggest that the soul can recognize its origin and transcend the false reality. Through gnosis, esoteric knowledge, humanity can awaken to the truth that Yaldabaoth is not the ultimate god, but a prison warden, and the true divinity exists beyond the material illusion. Some Gnostic texts even describe Yaldabaoth as blind, coiled in arrogance, and ignorant of the Pleroma, unable to perceive the light from which he came. This metaphorical blindness explains his role as a deceptive creator. He believes himself supreme, yet he is limited, imperfect, and separate from the true source of life. Yaldabaoth's creation is also deeply symbolic. The physical world, with its chaos, suffering, and death, is seen as a mirror of Yaldabaoth's own inner imperfection. Mountains, seas, storms, and disease reflect the instability of a god who is ignorant of the higher truth. Humanity, though trapped in this flawed creation, contains within itself the divine spark, a fragment of the pleroma. Gnostic teachings emphasize that this spark is eternal, untouched by Yaldabaoth's deception, and capable of escaping the prison of matter through knowledge and spiritual awakening. Interestingly, Yaldabaoth bears striking resemblance to other ancient demons older than humanity. He is a creator who predates humanity yet is not divine in the highest sense. Unlike Tiamat, who represents chaos in nature, or Angra Mainyu, who embodies destructive will, Yaldabaoth is intellectually flawed, arrogant, and blind. His evil is not born of malevolence but ignorance misused as authority, making him both terrifying and tragic. For the Gnostics, he is a reminder that cosmic forces can be immensely powerful yet profoundly mistaken, shaping the universe in ways that seem intentional but are ultimately flawed. The Gnostic myth also situates Yaldabaoth in a hierarchy of time and space. While the pleroma is eternal, Yaldabaoth governs temporal reality. He is said to have created Adam, the first human, from the elements of the world, imbuing him with physical life. But the divine spark, hidden within Adam, remained untouched by Yaldabaoth, a secret waiting to be awakened. When humans achieve gnosis, they pierce the veil of his reality, transcending his authority. In this sense, Yaldabaoth is not merely a demon but a primal obstacle, a pre-human entity whose existence precedes humanity and yet dominates their material experience. Throughout Gnostic writings, Yaldabaoth's character is vividly described. He is lion-faced, serpent-bodied, blind, and deaf to higher truths. His arrogance is cosmic, declaring, "I am the only God," while being entirely unaware of the supreme divine beyond him. The imagery is not only symbolic, it is pedagogical. Yaldabaoth embodies the principle that power without wisdom is dangerous, and that creation unaligned with higher truth results in suffering. In many ways, Yaldabaoth is a precursor to later conceptions of demons, fallen angels, and corrupt divine beings. He demonstrates a recurring theme in mythologies worldwide: beings older than humanity exist, often shaping the world before humans arrived, and their imperfect natures leave humanity to navigate a flawed cosmos. Unlike other myths where evil is external or malevolent by design, Gnostic texts portray the danger as ignorance posing as divinity, a subtle but profound insight into the origins of suffering and the human condition. The story of Yaldabaoth also serves as a philosophical lens on human responsibility. If the world was created by a flawed being, then suffering is not punishment but the natural outcome of an imperfect cosmos. Humanity's task, according to Gnosticism, is not merely survival, but awareness, enlightenment, and liberation. Knowledge itself is salvific. It is the key that allows the divine spark within each human to return to its origin, escaping Yaldabaoth's limited dominion. Ultimately, Yaldabaoth's myth invites us to reflect on a terrifying possibility: that the universe, as we perceive it, is not crafted by perfection or benevolence, but by forces older, blind, and flawed. This pre-human entity continues to echo in the human imagination as the archetype of a powerful but corrupting force, a reminder that some entities are older than us, shaping reality long before our arrival. In the broader context of ancient demons older than humanity, Yaldabaoth stands unique. He is a creator demon, a being whose authority predates human life, whose ignorance births the material world, and whose deceptive power traps souls. Yet, in Gnostic thought, he is not invincible, and understanding him is the first step toward liberation. The false creator, in his arrogance, ultimately reveals the path to truth, to recognize the higher divinity beyond him and awaken the eternal spark within. Namtar, demon of plague and fate, Mesopotamia. In the earliest days of civilization, long before cities rose from mud, brick and clay, humans lived in constant fear of the unseen forces that shaped their lives. The Sumerians, one of the oldest known civilizations, believed that the world was governed not only by gods but also by entities far older than humanity itself, beings whose presence was felt in every shadow, every disease, and every sudden death. Among these ancient and terrifying entities was Namtar, a figure whose name would come to represent both plague and fate. Namtar's origins lie deep in Mesopotamian cosmology, in a time when the boundaries between life and death were fluid, and humans had no understanding of germs or natural disease. The word Namtar roughly translates to fate or destiny, but in his mythology, this destiny was not benevolent. He was the personification of sudden calamity, disease, and misfortune, a cosmic enforcer of inevitable endings. Unlike other deities who brought fertility, rain, or prosperity, Namtar brought inevitability and despair. He was feared, revered, and acknowledged in hushed tones, for to attract his attention was to invite suffering. In the Sumerian pantheon, Namtar is described as the messenger of Ereshkigal, the queen of the underworld. Ereshkigal ruled Ker, the realm of the dead, a shadowy world beneath the earth, where human souls went after death. Namtar was her agent in the mortal world, tasked with enforcing her will. When a plague struck a city, when famine swept across the fields, or when a sudden death claimed the young and old alike, it was believed that Namtar had walked among them. He did not act out of malice alone, rather, he maintained the balance between life and death, ensuring that humans could not escape the natural order. Unlike the capricious gods of Mesopotamia, who could be appeased with offerings of grain, incense, or prayers, Namtar was implacable and inevitable. His essence was fate itself, a force older than cities, older than kings, older than humanity. To the Sumerians, disease was not random, it was a message from Namtar, a reminder of the fragility of life and the supremacy of cosmic order. Epidemics were seen not simply as physical afflictions but as manifestations of his presence, a way for the underworld to assert its authority over the living. Texts and cuneiform inscriptions depict Namtar as a terrifying figure. In some myths, he is described as a shadowy man with burning eyes, whose touch brings sickness. In others, he takes on a more monstrous appearance, his limbs writhing like serpents, his breath a miasma that spreads pestilence wherever he treads. Unlike the gods who were worshipped in temples or celebrated in festivals, Namtar's cult was based on avoidance and appeasement. Families would make small offerings, not in hope of blessings, but in desperate attempts to divert his attention. Herbs, incantations, and protective charms were used to shield the vulnerable from his gaze, especially children, who were believed to be most susceptible to his influence. One of the most chilling aspects of Namtar was his connection to personal destiny. He did not simply spread disease randomly. He was said to know each person's lifespan and ultimate fate. This made him both feared and respected, an entity whose presence reminded humans that their lives were not entirely their own. Every sudden illness, every unexpected death, was interpreted as Namtar's hand at work. In some tales, he is even called the Chief of Destiny, suggesting that he had the power not just to inflict suffering but to determine the path of every mortal life. The Mesopotamian fear of Namtar also reveals a fascinating insight into early human psychology. In a world without medicine, without knowledge of pathogens, humans had to make sense of the uncontrollable. By personifying disease as a demon, the Sumerians created a narrative in which even the most random-seeming misfortune had meaning. Namtar, in a sense, gave structure to chaos. He transformed epidemics, plagues, and sudden death into a moral and cosmic lesson, reminding humanity that their existence was precarious and that no one could escape the laws of the universe. Namtar also appears in myths alongside other demons and divine figures. In some stories, he works in concert with Pazuzu, the demon of storms and pestilence, to spread disease during times of social unrest or divine judgment. In others, he serves as a warning: if the god's balance is disrupted, Namtar will act as the enforcer, bringing swift and unavoidable punishment. His presence reinforces the idea that humans are never truly masters of their own fate. Even kings and rulers, powerful though they may be, are subject to his unseen hand. Interestingly, Namtar's role evolved over time. In later Akkadian and Babylonian texts, he is sometimes depicted not merely as an agent of death but as a messenger and intermediary between the living and the underworld. In this capacity, he becomes a figure of both fear and utility. Humans would appeal to him for protection from other plagues or calamities, acknowledging his power even as they trembled before it. This duality, both destroyer and protector, reflects a deeper truth in ancient Mesopotamian thought. Demons were not inherently evil, they were forces of nature, primordial realities that humans had to reckon with, long before science could explain the world. By examining Namtar, we also gain insight into the broader Sumerian understanding of life and death. Humanity was young, fragile, and constantly at the mercy of older forces. While gods could be petitioned and worshipped, demons like Namtar were reminders that chaos existed independently of human morality or ritual. They predated humanity and would likely outlast it. In many ways, Namtar represents the ultimate lesson of Mesopotamian thought: the world is older than we are, darker than we imagine, and full of beings whose purposes are beyond our comprehension. Namtar's legacy extends beyond Sumerian culture. Later civilizations, including the Akkadians, Babylonians, and even Hebrews, absorbed aspects of his myth. The concept of a personal demon of fate or disease influenced the development of angelology and demonology in later traditions. In some Jewish texts, the idea of a messenger of death echoes Namtar's role, showing how primordial fears of disease and mortality were universal across time and space. Ultimately, Namtar is more than a mythological figure. He is a symbol of humanity's earliest confrontation with mortality. He embodies the terror of the unknown, the inevitability of fate, and the recognition that humans arrived in a world already inhabited by forces far older and more powerful than themselves. His story reminds us that even in the earliest attempts to understand the cosmos, humans sought meaning in suffering and created narratives to explain the inexplicable. Camazotz, death bat of the underworld, Maya. Long before humans walked the jungles of Mesoamerica, the gods themselves were weaving the threads of creation. Among the oldest and most terrifying of these primordial forces was Camazotz, the dreaded death bat of the Maya underworld. Unlike ordinary creatures, Camazotz was no simple animal. He was a being of divine terror, a manifestation of darkness itself, a predator born from the night and the void. His name itself carries weight. In the Quiche Maya language, Came signifies death, while Zotz means bat. Together, they form an entity whose very existence embodies the inevitability of mortality, the fear of the unknown, and the violent chaos that predates humanity. In the Popol Vuh, the sacred book of the Quiche Maya, Camazotz is introduced as one of the guardians of the underworld, a realm called Xibalba, the place of fear. Xibalba is no ordinary hell. It is a complex labyrinth of rivers, caves, and trials, ruled by deities older than humankind. Here, the forces of death, disease, and darkness converge, and Camazotz stands as one of the most feared inhabitants. Unlike the gods who governed life or the sun, Camazotz represents the primal, relentless shadow, the force that existed before humanity had any notion of time, morality, or destiny. Camazotz is often depicted as a humanoid bat, with leathery wings, sharp claws, and fangs designed to tear through flesh. Yet these depictions are more than artistic exaggeration. They reflect how the Maya perceived nature itself as dangerous and divine. Bats were mysterious creatures to early peoples, nocturnal, elusive, and associated with caves, thresholds between worlds. Camazotz embodies these fears, magnifying them into a being that not only inhabits the underworld but hunts within it. In myth, he is not a mindless monster. He is a hunter, a tactician, and a force of inevitability. Those who encounter him are not just threatened, they are reminded that life itself is fragile and fleeting. The most famous story of Camazotz appears in the tale of the hero twins, Hunahpu and Spalank. The twins, legendary figures in Maya mythology, are sent to Xibalba to confront its lords and endure its deadly trials. Among these challenges, they encounter a dark, silent chamber, inhabited by Camazotz. In an instant, the bat swoops down, decapitating the unsuspecting twin Hunahpu in one swift motion. This act is horrifying, but it is also symbolic. Camazotz does not kill out of malice alone. He embodies the primordial reality that death exists independently of human action. Before humans existed, death was already a constant, a force that even gods could not fully escape. Interestingly, Camazotz also has a dual nature. While he represents death and terror, he also embodies a kind of cosmic order. In Maya thought, Xibalba and its denizens exist to maintain balance. Life and death are intertwined, creation and destruction coexist. Camazotz's role is not evil in the moral sense. He is a guardian of thresholds, a reminder that the mortal world is finite, and that all things eventually return to the shadows. In this sense, he is much older than humanity itself, a relic of a time when death was not personalized, but absolute, a principle governing existence rather than a punishment or consequence. Scholars also suggest that Camazotz may have roots in even older Mesoamerican traditions, predating the Quiche Maya by centuries. Archaeological evidence shows bat-shaped idols and motifs throughout the region, often in tombs and caves, hinting at an ancient reverence and fear of the bat as a supernatural agent. These bats were associated with fertility, night, and the underworld, indicating that Camazotz's mythic essence was layered upon already ancient symbolic frameworks. Humanity may have arrived late to these myths, but the forces Camazotz represents, darkness, death, chaos, existed long before people recorded them. He is not merely a demon of human imagination, he is a vestige of a pre-human understanding of the world's dangers. The fear of Camazotz extends beyond his lethal abilities. His wings are symbolic as well. To the Maya, bats occupy liminal spaces, between life and death, light and dark, earth and sky. Camazotz's flight across the underworld and into myth signifies the pervasive reach of death itself. In caves, where he was believed to dwell, the Maya would leave offerings or perform rituals, acknowledging that certain forces cannot be confronted directly, they can only be appeased or respected. Such practices illustrate how deeply humans understood that the world they inherited was already filled with powers older than themselves. In modern interpretations, Camazotz continues to capture the imagination of those interested in mythology, occult history, and pre-human legends. Writers, artists, and filmmakers depict him as a symbol of the unknown, a reminder of nature's raw and predatory forces. Yet these representations only scratch the surface. To the ancient Maya, Camazotz was more than a monster. He was a teacher, a guardian, a warning, and a shadow of a world that existed before humanity dared to step into the light. His presence reminds us that the forces of chaos and death are not created by mankind, they predate it, shaping the conditions under which humanity must survive. Camazotz's myth also invites reflection on the universal human fear of the night, darkness, and the inevitability of death. Across cultures, ancient demons and predatory spirits fill similar roles. They personify what cannot be controlled and what existed long before humans arrived. In this way, Camazotz serves as a bridge between the pre-human cosmos and the human world, a chilling reminder that the earth is not ours by birthright, but inherited from powers older than imagination. To encounter Camazotz in myth is to face the uncomfortable truth: death and chaos are not consequences of human failings, they are ancient realities, woven into the very fabric of existence. His story is a warning, a lesson, and a preservation of knowledge from a time when humans were not yet the dominant species. In understanding Camazotz, we glimpse the world as it was before life began, and the enduring forces that humanity must navigate, a testament to the power and terror of entities older than mankind. Rangda, Queen of Demons, Balinese mythology. In the dense forests and volcanic valleys of Bali, where temples cling to cliff edges and incense smoke winds through the air, the name Rangda evokes terror, awe, and reverence. Known as the Queen of Demons, she is a figure of chaos, disease, and dark magic, and her legend predates human memory in the region. Rangda is not merely a character from folklore, she is a symbol of forces older than organized religion, a representation of the primordial chaos that existed before humanity understood the world. Rangda's origins are complex, and her story changes depending on which Balinese village you ask. Some legends claim she was once a mortal woman, a priestess skilled in magic who defied the king and was cursed into a demon. Others suggest she descended directly from the ancient spirits of the underworld, a being older than the kingdoms, forests, and even the first humans who settled the island. In all accounts, Rangda is described as terrifying: long, unkempt hair flowing like black rivers, eyes wide and blazing with fury, fangs jutting from her mouth, and her skin often described as pale or ashen, a mark of her connection to the netherworld. But Rangda is not evil in the simple sense that later monotheistic religions would define evil. Instead, she embodies chaos, imbalance, and natural destructive forces. She represents what early Balinese culture perceived as a necessary counterbalance to order. While villages depended on law, ritual, and harmony, Rangda existed as a reminder that chaos and danger were ever present, especially forces that predated human understanding. Epidemics, crop failures, volcanic eruptions, and natural disasters were often attributed to her wrath, reflecting the human attempt to personify and negotiate with uncontrollable cosmic forces. One of the most famous stories involving Rangda is her epic confrontation with Barang, the lion-like protector spirit of the village. Barang is often considered the opposite of Rangda. He represents life, order, and protection, while Rangda embodies death, disease, and the wild, untamed forces of the cosmos. Their battle is reenacted in the Barang dance, a ritual performed in Bali to this day. The dance is not merely theatrical, it is a spiritual practice meant to balance the forces Rangda represents with those of Barang. In these performances, Rangda's dancers wear elaborate masks and costumes, her movements wild and terrifying, her eyes bulging in fury as she spreads chaos. Barang, with controlled, measured movements, counters her every attack, demonstrating the eternal struggle between order and disorder. Rangda's association with black magic is another key aspect of her legend. In Balinese culture, magic was historically divided into two main forms: good magic, pasawakan, and black magic, leek or santet. Rangda is often described as the most powerful practitioner of black magic. She could summon plagues, possess individuals, and command spirits to wreak havoc. Villagers feared her not only as a myth but as an active spiritual force. To appease her or to protect themselves, Balinese communities would perform rituals, offerings, and dances, acknowledging that the Queen of Demons was as much a part of life as the sun or the volcanoes. Interestingly, Rangda's fearsome reputation is intertwined with a cultural understanding of the necessity of evil. In many ancient Balinese myths, she is not destroyed, her power is not eliminated, but contained through ritual and acknowledgement. This reflects a broader mythological pattern seen across civilizations. Primordial chaos is not something humans can permanently defeat, it can only be respected, balanced, or temporarily restrained. Rangda, in this sense, is an ancient entity who predates humanity's moral frameworks. She represents the forces that shaped the world before humans walked it, the wildness that existed before order, and the dangerous knowledge that humans must negotiate with rather than conquer. Some scholars draw parallels between Rangda and other ancient demon figures worldwide. Like Lilitu of Sumeria, she preys on the vulnerable, infants, the sick, or those who neglect ritual. Like Erlik Khan of Turkic myth, she governs death and the underworld, ensuring that the natural order of life and death is maintained. Her enduring presence in Balinese culture demonstrates how ancient demonic figures were woven into the fabric of everyday life, providing both cautionary tales and mechanisms for understanding the uncontrollable forces around them. The Queen of Demons also holds a unique place in the spiritual and psychological life of the Balinese people. Rangda is invoked not just as a story of terror but as a mirror for human flaws, greed, anger, envy, and the destructive impulses that exist in all individuals. In this sense, she is older than human law or morality, a reflection of the chaos that exists in the universe and within ourselves. By confronting Rangda in ritual, dance, or storytelling, humans symbolically engage with the pre-human forces of destruction, acknowledging that even with civilization and knowledge, they remain at the mercy of older, uncontrollable powers. In modern times, Rangda has transcended folklore into popular culture, appearing in films, novels, and documentaries about Balinese mythology. Yet, despite this commercialization, her myth retains its original resonance. She reminds humanity of the ancient world that existed before us, and the forces we inherit that we can neither fully understand nor control. The volcanoes of Bali, the unpredictable winds, the sudden illness, these are her echoes, her fingerprints left on the world long before humans arrived. Ultimately, Rangda is a testament to the idea that demons were not merely born from human imagination. They are the personification of primordial chaos, the living memory of a time before human order. Her story, performed in dances, whispered in rituals, and preserved in myth, teaches a vital lesson. Humanity may rise, civilizations may flourish, but the world we inherit is older than we are, and some forces, like Rangda, remain eternal. When we speak of Rangda as the Queen of Demons, we are not merely recounting a legend. We are witnessing a living memory of the pre-human world, a dark reflection of forces older than morality, law, and even humanity itself. To understand her is to glimpse a world in which chaos existed first, and where humans, brief as our tenure may be, must navigate the ancient powers that came before us. If these ancient myths are to be believed, then humanity did not enter a pure world, we inherited one already scarred by older powers. Demons were not born from human sin, they were waiting long before we arrived. Across every civilization, the same warning echoes through time: chaos is never destroyed, only buried. Perhaps these ancient entities still exist, not in legends, but in the fears we carry and the shadows we avoid. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into forbidden mythological origins, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, remember what came before us.